Hello, trumpet players. This is video number 5 in our Comeback Trumpet Player Guide series. In this video, we'll be talking about the importance of listening. I have been telling my students for many years that listening is more important than practicing. I have never said that listening replaces practicing. You still have to practice. But listening is more important than practicing because without the listening, you don't know what it is you're trying to strive for. So, now what do we mean by listening? Your listening can be recordings. You can listen to recordings of famous trumpet players. You can listen to CDs. You can watch them on YouTube. A lot of people are doing that now. I actually think that's a wonderful thing. Watching trumpet players live on YouTube. I don't mean live, but you know what I mean. Without overdubs. And you have to watch out for the overdubs. If the dude is playing in a, I'm not going to be specific because it sounds like I'm putting people down. I think these videos are gorgeous. They're just not real. So you have to be careful of that. There are on-site videos that are not real. Like you have a video of somebody on the beach playing a piece and there's no beach sounds. And you hear this beautiful reverb and stuff like that. That recording was made previously, and now they're air horning it, just fingering and pretending to play. Maybe they're playing along with the recording so that it syncs up right. But that's not real. We like, though, like for example, the German brass or Menozel and groups like that. Those ensembles, there's a whole bunch of live recordings online, on YouTube, where you can actually see what they look like when they're playing. And there's a lot of stuff like that. There's jazz stuff, some wonderful jazz concerts with the greats. When we talk about the greats, we're talking about everybody from Louis Armstrong, Freddie Hubbard, and everybody in between. Although, you know, and if we're watching those guys and listening to them, we can make a connection between what they're doing and how they sound. So the video aspect of that is awesome. We have today, now maybe your town has radio stations that have jazz or classical music that you can listen to. The problem with that is you don't get to choose, right? Then we have Spotify and other streaming services, and all of this stuff is what we call listening. Now, the ultimate form of listening is when you go to a live performance. And the ultimate of the ultimate is when you sit next to somebody who knows what they're doing. So I like to think of it as how close are you to the trumpet player? So yes, it's a wonderful thing to go to the symphony, even if you're way up in the balcony and the trumpet player is way in the back of the stage. That's still better than listening to a CD. That's still better than watching a DVD or a YouTube video. But if you can catch that same trumpet player or someone of that caliber in a recital and be only 5 or 6 rows of chairs back from that trumpet player, that's a lot better. That's a lot better. And then maybe you're a jazz player, you go to one of those quaint jazz clubs, like here in Houston, we used to have Cezanne. Now, Cezanne is still there, but the old Cezanne Saison has moved because they tore down the building, but the old Saison was so small that I always used to be concerned that my spit valve would be leaking into their drinks. Right? Now, that is a great listening experience, is to be that close to the musician. I sat at the bar one night and listened to an hour's worth of Randy Brecker at that club. Awesome experience, right? That is way more than all the listening together I ever did of all his recordings. Now, I had heard him live before. Randy Brecker, I heard him play with the Bob Mintzer Band. I heard him playing with all these different, and these other, I heard him at a festival one time. Hearing somebody only 6 feet away from you is a whole different experience. And then finally, that last one that I was talking about is when you actually sit down and have a gig with somebody. Let's say you're at in a church orchestra, and they hire a ringer to play the first part or the last part. It doesn't matter what part we're playing. And just sitting there next to that person and absorbing not just how that person plays, but the demeanor, the style, and yeah, it's just like the whole package deal. The ultimate listening is always the listening that you do on the gig. Now, when I'm talking about listening and talking about the adults, I like to tell this story about one of my adult students. Now, he was not a comeback student. He was actually an adult beginner. That's a whole different can of worms, right? But still, the principle is the same. He originally had a job that allowed him to practice. Then he got a different job that required him to travel a lot. He used to go to Italy. He used to go to Israel. He used to go to India for his job. And he had responsibilities that meant that he couldn't practice most of the time. Now, what he did to make up for that, and this went on, I'm guessing about 2 or 3 years. What he did to make up for that was to saturate his ears in the music that he was trying to learn. He listens still to this day, he listens constantly. He listens as much as the students that I used to teach that are now famous jazz musicians today. I won't mention their names because I don't operate that way. But I had the opportunity when they were in high school to work with them as their jazz improvisation instructor. And these kids listened constantly. They had the earbuds in their ears. Back then it wasn't earbuds, it was headphones. And it's not a coincidence that those are the same students that today are considered some of the best jazz musicians in the world. And definitely some of the best jazz musicians of their generation. It's not a coincidence. And when you look at, remember the old Downbeat Magazine? Maybe there's still a Downbeat Magazine. I don't get it anymore. There's things they changed in the magazine that I don't like. But remember the old magazine where they used to have the musicians do like a listening test. This was always at the back of the magazine, right? And they would test famous musicians. And in my mind, here's where my mind is, right? This dude has no need to actually listen to other people's albums. He's already there. He's the top of the top of the top. He's They did this with people we consider today the greats. And they had these people who are the greats sit down and listen to recordings, and the detail that these guys would say about those recordings. They would say, "Oh yeah, man, that's so and so. Oh, I really dig this album. And listen to this over here at this part. He does that, and this other player over here, he does that." These guys know those recordings intimately. And it would be recordings that had happened recently. These guys are staying up on it all. There's a reason why the best of the best of the best of the best are listening so much. Whether it be cause or effect, the two of those things go together. I'm not going to say one causes the other or vice versa. You could say that great players just do that because that's how they are, or you could say that great players are great because they do that listening. What we do know is that the two of them go together. It is very rare to have a great musician, in this case we're talking about trumpet players, it is very rare to have a great, successful trumpet player who doesn't spend significant amounts of time listening. Now, getting back to that student of mine who had these obligations, and so he would be on the flights to these foreign countries and listen. He likes jazz, right? So he would listen to jazz the whole way there, the whole way back. He would listen to jazz in the car on the way to work. He had jazz on all the time. And not just any jazz, by the way. He was listening to the jazz that he wants to play. And during that 3 years where he had no time to practice, he continued to come to his lessons and he made progress anyway. How awesome is that? Now, remember that listening never replaces practicing. I am not telling you that he would not have been better if he had more time to practice. Of course, he would have been better. The point I'm making is he didn't backslide because he didn't practice. He continued every week, week after week after week, to become a better player. And he spent, for every hour that he spent practicing, for every hour he spent practicing, he spent at least 20 hours. I don't think that's an exaggeration. He spent at least 20 hours listening. And he continued to make progress. And he still continues to make progress today. You know, we're talking about working men and women. It's just I don't teach very many women. Not that I have a problem with it, right? But I seem to attract more men than I do women as students, right? But these are hard-working men. There are times when they can't practice. That's life. But there's never a time when they can't listen. And because they do the listening, they continue to make progress on their instrument. Would they like it to be faster progress? Yes, they would. But then who doesn't? Right? How many of you watching this that do practice every day think that you make enough progress? Not making enough progress is actually a state of being as a trumpet player. Right? It only becomes a problem when we start to compare ourselves to other people. Really, when you get down to it, that's the only time that becomes a problem. So, I'm going to end with this. I'm going to say it one more time. Listening is actually more important than practicing. And we talk about purpose. What is your purpose for playing the instrument? I think your purpose should actually guide you in what you should listen to. Now, there are some exceptions, right? So, like, even if my students want to be jazz players, I still make them listen to certain classical recordings because I want them to hear what the trumpet sounds like on its own, right? And there are some recordings like that. I love for the students when they're first getting into this. I love to assign. There's um, a duo recording of Clark Terry and I think it's Red Mitchell, where it's just trumpet and bass or flugelhorn and bass. What a beautiful way to saturate your ears in that jazz sound. On the trumpet side, we have the etudes that are recorded by David Baldwin. I love to assign that to my students. Stuff where you're going to hear the trumpet by itself. Most of those recordings are classical recordings. That's why I said that earlier. But you're actually going to hear when you do that what the trumpet sounds like. Now, above and beyond that, if you were my student, we would make you listen to that stuff first. But then after that, you should be listening to the same stuff that your purpose dictates that you're going to listen to. Not necessarily the exact same songs, but let's say your purpose has you playing church music, then you really should be listening to church music. If your purpose is to have fun, then you should be listening to the music that you enjoy listening to, right? That sounds like a no-brainer, but you know, some people, I've been teaching comeback players for a long time, and it makes me scratch my head sometimes why they're doing some of the stuff that they do, but that's why we talk about the purpose. Remember what your purpose is, and you won't get distracted like that. Now, there's no bad listening, but if, let's say, for example, you say your purpose is to glorify God at church, but all you're listening to is Earth, Wind, and Fire and what we call the horn bands, right? Chicago, the other funk band, what's that? Tower of Power. If that's what you're listening to, but you're trying to play church music, that's a distraction. Now, I'm not saying thou shalt not listening to funk music. I'm not saying that. Maybe you want to do funk music at church, but if it's not an option for you to do funk music at church, you're kind of wasting your time if you're not listening to church music. And I'll tell you what, there's some people who want to play certain kinds of music, but they hate to listen to it. That's offensive. Pause for effect, right? Let me say that again. If you're one of those who likes to play a kind of music, but you actually hate listening to it, that's offensive. That's socially unacceptable. It's rude. Okay? It really is rude, in my opinion. Music is cultural, and if you, that's like saying I like to cook certain kinds of foods, but I hate to eat it. I guess that kind of works, though, doesn't it? But anyway, I actually consider that to be very rude. I'm offended. I don't get offended by much, but that sort of thing does offend me. Just a tiny bit. I actually think that you should listen to the music that you want to play. So, all right. If you have any questions about this, please feel free to ask. And now that I'm saying it, I'm going to remind you that I do have a weekly, semi-weekly Q and A session, live stream Q and A session, where you can ask questions. And I will answer in the video. You can either ask them in advance, and I'll answer them first when we get started. And you can ask them in advance either on the video itself or on my blog. And there's links for those down in the description. Or you can join us live. That's the more fun way to do it. It's just that a lot of people can't be there at that time. And any questions you have about how to play the trumpet or your personal comeback, well, and by the way, not just questions. What we get every once in a while is people reporting back and saying, hey, thank you so much. This is what I've accomplished now. And we're like, yes, that's great. We like that, right? We like to hear your good news. So if you've tried something out in these videos and it's working for you, we invite you to come to our session, our Q and A session, and tell us, or tell us beforehand, and I'll share it with the people in the Q and A. Okay? Because we like that. That's what this is all about, is you doing better. You having good news. Okay? That's what we're doing here. All right. With that said, I'm going to tell you, God bless you, and we'll see you on the next video. Thank you for watching this video. I wanted to spend just a minute to let you know that there's a better, more convenient, more organized way to access all of these videos. We have literally hundreds of videos here on YouTube, and quite frankly, it's a bit of a mess. So, to make it a little bit more organized and easier for you to access what you want to access, I created a separate page, a separate area on my website. That's eddielewis.com. And if you go to eddielewis.com, click on the menu, click on videos. It will take you there. I have the videos categorized, and then within those categories, some of them, like the educational videos, you can click on it and go in there and look for the videos specifically that you're looking for. Okay? So go to eddielewis.com, EDDIELEWIS.com. Thank you very much.